So what happened was in 1902, now he's living up on the mountain. I'm just giving you up to the, I'm trying to bring in the teachings of Ramana. How did his teachings begin? How did people come to know? He was still known as Brahmana Swami, and there was a gentleman in the town by the name of Shiv Prakasham Pillai. Shiv Prakasham Pillai already had master's degree in philosophy, was working as a clerk in the local office, and had come to Tiruvannamalai. Sorry, he wasn't working in the town. He used to be in one of the revenue departments, and he was in the town of Tiruvannamalai on official duty, and he had already heard Brahmana Swami's name. So he wanted to clarify some questions in his mind as a student of philosophy. So he says, let me go to this Brahmana Swami and talk to him about it. So in 1902, when Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, when he was not known as Ramana Maharshi, he would have been 1902, 22, 23 years old. And he used to live in a gufa, in a cave, alone there, and never used to worry about food. People used to bring him food. Otherwise, he'll go hungry if the food didn't come. So Shiv Prakasham Pillai goes up on the mountain and talks to Brahmana Swami. And he asks him a few questions. But there was no piece of paper or pencil. There was no slate. So Ramana Maharshi, Brahmana Swami would write in sand, and Shiv Prakasham Pillai would remember it or quickly make notes. And that is how he compiled all the answers that Ramana Maharshi gave. One of the questions he asked was, who am I? That was probably the first question Shiv Prakasham Pillai asked. This is the way to describe how you are not the body, because the mind, which is the ego, which was the central teaching of Ramana Maharshi, mind is the ego. So the very next question he says, if I'm none of these, then who am I? And Bhagavan, Brahmana Swami says, after negating all of the above, matlab sare dhatu, which is called humors in English, you know, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not the breath, I'm not the eye, I'm not this, all the functions, all the neurological, nothing I am. Who am I? He says, after negating all these above mentioned as not this, which in Sanskrit is called neti, neti. So after negating all the above mentioned as not this, that awareness, which alone remains, that I am. So let's understand this. What is this awareness? Awareness is actually absolutely always around me, but I don't notice it. So this is the first lesson we can begin to practice from today, that when I'm walking, I will take a notice on the other jivas. Just as myself, I'm a jiva. Breath flows through this body. That's why I'm called alive. The day this breath stops, people would say, Marg died today. Right? The entity of this existence, which is named Marg, will be gone the day the breath goes. This particularly becomes very, very pertinent as an elaboration in the Western world, because people are so enamored, enamored means itne chipke hue hai apni zindagi se, apne health se. You know, that's why yoga and health has become so big in the world. Body has become more important. But awareness is not this body. Awareness is inside the body. Where is it? Some people point to the head and some people to the pumping heart, the blood. But actually it is the breath. That is the awareness. Because I don't know where this breath comes from. I don't know where it goes. It comes when I am delivered into this world. It starts then. And I'm gone. When this breath stops, I'm not part of this world. So that awareness is in the tree, in the dog, in the cat, in the sparrow, in the tiger, in the lion, in the ocean, in the rain, on the mountains, in the rock, even in sentient things that we see. It's only a rock. It's only a mountain. You can spit on it or kick it. But no, still it has some awareness in it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. The other way to look at awareness is that there are 5 elements, 5 basic elements because of which the universe runs. What are those 5 basic elements? Air, ether, earth, fire, and water. And human beings can never create any one of these 5 elements in its purity. We can create something very parallel to it, but so far we have not even come close to that. We cannot create water. We cannot create the earth. We cannot create ether. Ether is not Akash. Akash is Akash in Sanskrit. Ether is Akash in Sanskrit. But in common parlance, Akash is sky. But that is not ether. Ether is that which is not the wind. Ether is that which is not the air. Ether is that which pervades all around me. I can't feel it. I can't touch it. I cannot say ki ha, ether is like we can say, oh, the air is blowing very, very nicely. Cool air is the breeze. But ether is not that. So these 5 elements cannot be created by human beings. And we must begin to look at the other entities and what is my relationship with them. Because in the cosmic eye, जिसको हम भगवान मानते हैं, the one that we consider God, is what? Is awareness. Who runs the universe? Not only this earth, which is a tiny dot in the entire Srishti. We are just a small dot. Earth itself, the planet, is a dot. In that dot, there's 8 billion people now, right? Very smaller dots. And then there's so many oceans and so many other forests, all small dots. So I should become cognizant, meaning I should become aware that I'm not the only Srishti here. And I must respect everybody that I meet every day in my life, whether it be a dog, whether it be a man in a ragged clothes that is very dirty, that I say, get out of my way. Like Shankaracharya was told, right? Get out of my... Shankaracharya told that, what are they called? What are they called in Hindi? Those who burn the bodies. I forget the name. The name is not coming in my mind right now. Shankaracharya, though he was so learned, and this man was coming from the opposite direction. And Shankaracharya said, get out of the way. Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya. We are talking of the 8th century. And this man had only come disguised as this body burner. I forget the name right now. Jallad. Urdu mein Jallad kehte hain usko. So that man says, whom are you asking to move? The body or me? And then Shankaracharya realized that this was no ordinary Jallad. This was somebody who had come to test and check his own knowledge. So he bows to him. Anyway, that's a long story, but we are not going to digress. So Bhagavan, slowly after this, he still remained Brahmana Swami. He answered 14 questions. Originally, there were 13 or 14 questions that he asked Shiv Prakasham Pillai. And Shiv Prakasham Pillai was about a little older, maybe a year and a half older than Bhagavan, than Brahmana Swami. So then he goes on. These 2 questions I quickly want to read and then move on to something else. Then what he says, because he says, you are not this, but you are the awareness. So the next question Sri Prakasham Pillai asks is, what is the nature of awareness? What is awareness? Kis tarah ka, kis cheez, kaisa hai awareness, kya hai? And he says the nature of awareness is existence, consciousness, bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. Now that's a loaded word. And that's another thing. Ramana Maharshi expounded on these things, that the Vedanta, which means the Upanishads, have come close to but did not. That's why Bhagavan's works, and not this particular one, but Updeshasaram, is known as the end of Upanishads by the scholars who know Sanskrit and who know Vedanta. The Swamis, the learned Swamis, they call Updeshasaram the end of Vedanta, because here Ramana Maharshi explained things that Vedanta did not clarify to human beings. And we'll come to that in a moment. So the very next question he asks is, what is the nature of awareness? And he says, the nature of awareness is Sat Chit Ananda. Why Sat Chit Ananda? Because that moksha, We call it moksha, nirvana, or swarga, or ultimate reality. वो क्या है? That is Sat, Sat Chit Ananda. That is true. That alone is true. Nothing else is true, because everything else that exists is perishable. This body is perishable, that tree is perishable, that ocean will change its course, the countries will change its boundaries, the languages will change, food changes every 25 kilometers, language changes every 50 kilometers. So what I'm trying, and these are all numbers I'm just saying, I thought these are not scientific numbers. All these things that we experience are objects. सब वस्तु है जिसकी वजह से मुझे एक experience होता है. That is why I experience my world. What is my world? My world is me, first of all. Somebody says, Mark, where are you from? I've not met you before. Who are you? Mark starts by saying, my name is Mark. I was born in such and such place in India, and now I live in such and such country, or I travel, and my education is this. I have so many, and my wife's name is this, or my spouse's name is this. If I'm a woman, I say my husband's name, my children, their education, my money. Everything that defines me by objects is me. And awareness is beyond that. Awareness is beyond anything I see. What sees? Who sees it? I see it. And I call it an object, and I relate to it. So things that I don't need, I don't look at. That's why I can bet in the last 365 days, you have hardly looked at not even total 365 objects that the awareness has given us, which means water. Even in my house, I should be respectful of the water, because I cannot survive without it, or electricity, or wood, or whatever I see, because it is all given unto me for my existence. And the other point to make about awareness is, who provides existence to all other jivas? Every other jiva, whether it be a bird or a four-legged animal, or it be whatever it is, whatever your mind can think about, they don't think about their next meal. They don't think where they're going to sleep at night. They don't think as to what will they do during the day. It is already carved out. It is already destined for them. We as human beings, because we are the only species with a mind and an intellect which is gone in the wrong direction. That's why we don't ever think as to how do everybody else reside, live, exist. Where do all the birds go at night? Where do all the animals go at night? How they really find their own spot and space, and who provides them food every day. We are the only ones creating our own things away from awareness. We are farther from awareness than the animals. So that's another way of looking at Advaita Vedanta. And one more point here. People argue, my eyes see everything. I see they are real. Because Advaita Vedanta says this world is not real. My eye sees anything? My eye cannot see anything. My eye is just a lens like the camera lens. It perceives that there is Dilliji sitting there or Yuvrajji sitting there. But actually it is my mind that tells me that that gentleman is known as Dilliji, or that lady is known as Nabina or Khushbu, or that is Shankarji. There's a name given to it. Similarly, my mind tells me that's an ocean, that's a mountain, that's a snow-capped mountain. Those are the palm trees, that's the beach, this is my house. My mind defines things. And Advaita Vedanta says, diminish your mind, dwarf your mind, control your mind. What is meditation? Controlling the mind from thinking too many things into just thinking of one thing, awareness. So Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi in 1902, after having Shiv Prakasham Pillai having talked to him, and one more question I wanted to read, which I didn't read, and quickly I'll just touch upon it. Give me 1 second, I closed it. There we go. Oh, where did I put it? Anyway, so I have the book here, right here. So the next question he asks is, when will the realization of the self be gained? How will I realize that awareness then? How can I be realized? मुझे मोक्ष कैसे प्राप्त होगा? मुझे कैसे निर्वाण प्राप्त होगा? How will I attain it? And he says, when the world, listen to the answer of a 1902, 22-year-old boy or a man. When the world, which is what is seen, वो दुनिया जो आपको दिखती है, when the world, which is what is seen, has been removed, there will be realization of the self, which is the seer. How loaded this answer is. When the world is removed, which the world that I see, which when that is removed, there will be realization of the self. Self in the right side of the chest for identification by mortals like us. Otherwise, there's nothing inside the right chest. Awareness, self is all pervading. There will be realization of the self, which is the seer. Drashta. Drashta is also another Vedantic, Advaita Vedantic apology that commentary that we should read. But we'll come to that later on. So who sees this whole world? We all have said, now God knows everything. God sees all your activities. That is awareness. Awareness sees everything. Awareness is created. Every being. Being is what? Jiva. Jiva is what? Through which breath flows. And in ancient objects where the breath does not flow, or we do not know how it flows, they still exist because of the existence that created it. So when I begin to look at the awareness like this, then I become a little more humble. I'm not the only one. And this life is not only to proliferate. This life is not only for my accumulation, my progress. Actually, the less I accumulate and less I stay connected with the world, closer, at least my journey begins. My plane ride begins towards awareness, towards moksha, towards nirvana. So in 1902, Sri Prakasham Pillai talks to him. Still he is known as Brahmana Swami. And then in 1907, a major event takes place. There was a gentleman by the name of Ganapati Muni, who was also known as Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni or Vashishta Ganapati Muni. Why was he called Kavyakanta? Because he was, at that time in India, the most prolific Sanskrit scholar of the country was Ganapati Muni. Tamilian gentleman, short, demure, very, very small frame. And he also had come to Tiruvannamalai because Tiruvannamalai is the place where Parvati had done her penance. We will not go into those stories today. Next time, if we ever meet, we will talk about those things. But he had done a lot of penance. Penance is what? Penance is tapas. He had done tapas in many places. He knew entire Vedantic knowledge. He had read entire Shankaracharya. There was nothing you could teach Ganapati Muni. And he was called Kavyakanta because he could recite a shloka at any given moment. He could give it like that, impromptu. He had the blessings of Saraswati like that. So he also comes to Tiruvannamalai thinking that his penance, he has been doing so much of tapas and still he's not getting it. It's not clear, like the Sanat Kumar brothers. We read everything, but we don't know what comes next. Ganapati did not know. And one thing troubled him. What actually is tapas? I've done so much of tapas, and still I don't know the real meaning of tapas. I understand what is tapas. I know how to do it, but yet I don't have clarity about what is tapas, what is penance. And in 1907, he decides to move to Tiruvannamalai thinking that this is the final place I must do my penance, my tapas, because Tiruvannamalai is such a religious and spiritual place. So he comes and he also had heard of Brahmana Swami before also. There is an incident where it says that he had, but anyway, in 1907, he also goes up to the mountain, sits in front of Brahmana Swami, who recognizes him because they had one meeting prior to this. He recognizes him, he sits down and he asks him one question. He says, I've done enough tapas. I know Vedanta. I know Vedanta Sar. I can recite from any one of those. And yet, and I've done tapas everywhere. The best of the places where tapas should be done, I've done. And yet, I don't have clarity about the word tapas. Can you explain to me? What does this really mean? And Ramana Swami remains quiet for some time. And then he tells him, I'm trying to look for that quote. If I can find it, I want to read that quote to you, add verbatim and not paraphrase it and miss a word. So he asked this question, and he says, what is tapas? And he says, tapas is that when you, rather than looking for it, I'll just paraphrase it. I won't go too off. He says, when you recite a mantra, and when you are able to focus on the point from where the sound begins of your mantra, and when you can merge that sound in your heart, that is tapas. When you, I'm going to repeat the words, when you enunciate something, and that's why I refer to Vaikari moments ago, Madhyam, Pashyanti to Madhyama to Vaikari. हम बोलते हैं, वो कहाँ से आवाज आती है? So he says, when you chant a mantra, when you enunciate a mantra, and if you focus on from where does the sound begin, and if you can bring that sound in your heart to the right, that is tapas. When he heard this, and Ganpati Muni was a very well-known man at that time. He had a large following. Lots of people used to be his devotees and disciples. He used to teach them Sanskrit and Vedanta Sar. So that day onwards, and everybody knew, I didn't tell you this part of the story, everybody knew that this boy's name is Venkataraman, and that he is from Tiruchuli, a small town in Tamil Nadu. That originally he's from Tiruchuli, that's where he was born. So I will tell you that story next time. Why? So Ganpati Muni knew his first name is Venkataraman, but he confirmed again that day from the attendant, this is Venkataraman, right? He says, yes. So that day he decided we will call him Ramana Maharshi. And that's why Ganpati Muni decided to call him Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. And then when he went back, he wrote a letter to all his disciples that henceforth we will call him Ramana Maharshi. He is no ordinary boy of 20, 23, 29 years old, because in 1907 he would have been 29 years old. He is a sage of the sages. He is none other than an avatar like he is, because no one else can do this. Remain without food, remain silent for 12 years. And after this, he broke its silence. So the teachings he gave was, find out who you are. Who am I? Not who you are, but who am I? Main kaun hoon? I must find out what is my real nature. And my real nature is that I continue to see the world as the real world. And my nature should be that this world is not real. And to get to that, I must get to my limited worldly nature first. I must know mera swabhav kya hai. What is my nature in my day-to-day dealings with people? I must know that first. And this, Marg Bandhu speaks from his personal experience given to him by Bhagavan. We must, because this has been explained by Bhagavan in a very subtle way, only at a few places. One place was the last question of who am I, which became the last question, 28th question. And he explains a little bit there, but people don't pay attention to it. But because of my blessings of Bhagavan, I got this Raz, this secret revealed to me. What is liberation is the last question, 28th. And he says, inquiring into the nature of one's self, that is in bondage. And realizing one's true nature is liberation. He has bifurcated it in two parts. Listen again. What is liberation? Inquiring into the nature of one's self that is in bondage. We are all in bondage with this body, with this life, with this education, my parents, my kith and kin, my brothers and sisters, my spouse, my children, my brothers and sisters, second person and third person, my own second and third person, my child's, if my children are grown up, my brother, my daughter-in-law, brother, son-in-law, and then grandchild, and then their education, and this and that and that and that and that and that and that. Even if you make a list for 5 minutes, you will say, oh, my list is incomprehensible. I cannot finish the list. It'll keep multiplying. Ek ke baad, ek ke baad, ek ke baad, ek ke baad. Another thing he told people was that the I is the first thought. Briefly, I'm trying to give you some teaching and some life. The first thought is the I thought. Who gives it to us? Our parents give it to us. Why? Because we all have been born for a millennia. We've been born hundreds of thousands of times before. This is not the first time we are born. And so when we are until about 2 years old, roughly, we are innocent. We have no ego. We don't know. Even our mother, we call her Ma and Papa or Pitaji or whatever. But we don't know that they have a name, right? But by the time we are 2.5, our parents start telling us, oh, where is Babu's shoe, Babu's toy, or Mira's toy? And she picks up my toy. The I begins. My toy, my papa, my mama, my brother, my sister, my food, my glass. The I slowly starting unknown to the child. By the time child is 3 or 4, the child's ego begins to increase. Oh, if his friends comes, he says, my pencil, okay, you can use my pencil. He knows my room, my shoes, my this, my that. And then he knows my father has a name, my mother has a name, my brother has a name, right? And then third, so the first person gives the rise to the second person, my mother, my father. Then the third person is my school, my teacher, my friends in school, my that, my uncle, my this and that, everything. So that also Ramana Maharshi explained to people that your first ego is the I. And he said, annihilate the I. Kill the I. Ego is the mind. So this is a brief, hurried introduction to Bhagavan's teachings, which would later on be published as Who Am I? Almost after 20 years. Let's now move on to Q&A, and we can come back to these teachings and major episodes of that time later on. Okay, let's move on to Q&A, guys.
Jai Arunachala. Jai Arunachala.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all of you. Thank you. Thank you.